Hello and welcome. Tonight we're diving headfirst into the swirling vortex of geopolitical drama known as the 2025 US-Canada trade war. That nice, polite country to our north, known for its maple syrup, healthcare, and alarmingly attractive prime ministers, is now locked in an economic death grip with the good old US of A. But as we'll soon discover, even the most amicable of relationships can turn sour when you introduce enough tariffs. So, buckle up as we unpack this diplomatic dumpster fire, tracing the origins of the spat, the key players involved, and just how we arrived at this point. Let's get into it. Our trade saga actually begins back in the halcyon days of 2018. Remember those times? Avocado toast was still a thing, fidget spinners were inexplicably popular, and Donald Trump was busy slapping tariffs on anything that moved. Canada, much to its chagrin, found itself on the receiving end of this tariff-happy stick. A hefty 25% levy on steel and 10% on aluminum imports from Canada were imposed, with Trump citing national security concerns. Naturally, Canada wasn't about to take this lying down. They retaliated with counter-tariffs on a whole smorgasbord of American goods, from steel and aluminum right down to ketchup and toilet paper. For a while it seemed like the two countries were locked in a diplomatic game of chicken, each side waiting for the other to blink. Thankfully, some semblance of sanity prevailed, and the USMCA, the successor to NAFTA, was signed in 2020, largely resolving the dispute. But this fragile peace was not long for this world. The trade war embers were smoldering, waiting for the right, or should I say wrong, spark to ignite them once more. Fast forward to 2025. Trump, riding high on a wave of unwavering support, decides to grace us with a second term. His return to the Oval Office was marked by a series of bold and controversial decisions, and what better way to celebrate this victory than by reigniting a trade war with your friendly northern neighbor? The stage was set for another round of economic conflict, so in a move that surprised no one familiar with his governing style, Trump slapped Canada and Mexico with a fresh batch of 25% tariffs. The announcement sent shockwaves through the international community. This time the target was even broader, encompassing a wider range of goods, though he did spare oil and energy products. The list included everything from automobiles to electronics and even agricultural products. Those, for some reason, only got a 10% tariff. The decision to partially spare the energy sector raised many eyebrows. Now you might be wondering, what could possibly have driven this sudden and aggressive escalation? The rationale behind this move was a topic of heated debate. Was it a calculated move to strengthen America's economic standing? Or perhaps an attempt to shift the focus from domestic issues? A cunning strategy to outmaneuver China on the global stage? Theories abounded, but the official explanation was far more surprising. No, the official justification for this economic blitzkrieg was concerns about illegal immigration and drug trafficking from Canada. Yes, you heard that right. Yes, Canada. The land of Mounties, politeness, and an almost pathological aversion to jaywalking. The notion seemed almost absurd. Apparently hordes of nefarious Canadians were sneaking across the border, maple syrup in one hand, illicit substances in the other. The narrative was as bizarre as it was unexpected. Now, as you might imagine, this latest display of tariff-happy aggression didn't exactly go down well in Canada. The Canadian government, no longer content to just politely clear its throat and hope for the best, decided to respond in kind. Prime Minister Trudeau, channeling his inner hockey enforcer, announced dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs on a whopping $21 billion worth of U.S. imports. Steel, aluminum, you name it, if it had a Made in USA sticker on it, chances are it got slapped with a hefty tariff. But the economic retaliation was just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. This time, the trade war had struck a nerve, igniting a firestorm of public outrage across the Canadian populace. Calls to boycott American products echoed from coast to coast. Social media was abuzz with hashtags like #BoycottUSA and #MapleLeafStrong. The message was clear. Canada had had enough. This was a full-blown trade war, and Canada, armed with tariffs and a newfound sense of national pride, was ready to fight back. Now at this point you might think things couldn't get any more absurd, any more unhinged. But this is 2025 we're talking about, and absurdity, like a particularly resilient strain of the flu, just seems to keep mutating and coming back for more. Every time you think you've seen it all, something new and even more bizarre pops up. Enter stage left Donald Trump with all the grace and tact of a bull in a china shop, casually suggesting that, hey, maybe annexing Canada wouldn't be such a bad idea. Yes, you heard that right, annexing Canada, just absorb the entire country, maple syrup reserves and all, as the 51st state. Imagine the audacity, the sheer boldness of such a statement. I wish I could tell you this was just a joke, a throwaway line uttered in jest, something to laugh about over dinner. But alas, this was Trump we were talking about, a man known for his unpredictable and often controversial statements. Needless to say, the annexation comment didn't exactly go over well in Canada. The reaction was swift and filled with disbelief. Canadian officials, doing their best to maintain a veneer of diplomatic composure, basically told Trump to stuff it where the sun don't shine. Their response was both firm and polite, a true testament to Canadian diplomacy. They politely but firmly reminded him that Canada was, in fact, an independent nation with its own rich history, culture, and a functioning government, a country that values its sovereignty and independence. The message was clear: Canada wasn't about to become America's northern annex. The idea was as preposterous as it was offensive, and Canadians made sure their voices were heard loud and clear. If you found this breakdown of the US-Canada trade tensions insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates and analyses. Your support helps us bring you the latest in global affairs. As the trade war raged on, it wasn't just the federal governments throwing punches. Enter Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, Canada's most populous province, and a man who wasn't exactly known for his diplomatic finesse. Ford, perhaps feeling a tad left out of the spotlight, decided to up the ante, threatening to impose a 25% export tax on electricity flowing from Ontario to several U.S. states, including New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. Now you might be thinking, electricity? Really, that's the best you got? And you wouldn't be entirely wrong. But you had to hand it to Ford. He knew how to push buttons. The threat of power outages, particularly during those sweltering summer months, sent a shiver down the spines of many Americans. In the end though, Ford's power play proved to be more bark than bite. After much back and forth and likely some stern words from Ottawa, the proposed export tax was quietly shelved, but the message had been sent. The provinces weren't afraid to get their hands dirty in this trade war. By this point in our trade war saga, the pressure was mounting. The economic landscape was becoming increasingly volatile and the Canadian public was growing more anxious by the day. The Canadian economy was feeling the heat, public frustration was reaching a boiling point, and Justin Trudeau, the once unflappable poster boy of Canadian progressivism, was starting to look a little, well, let's just say the hair wasn't quite as on point as it used to be. The pressure was palpable, and the cracks were beginning to show. So, in a move that surprised many, Trudeau announced his resignation as Prime Minister. It was a decision that sent shockwaves through the political landscape, leaving many to wonder what would come next. Stepping into the void left by Trudeau was none other than Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, and a man whose resume could make even the most seasoned economist weep with envy. Carney was no stranger to high-stakes economic challenges. Carney, with his trademark blend of economic acumen and, dare I say it, a certain roguish charm, quickly took the reins of the Liberal Party and set about steering Canada through these turbulent economic waters. His approach was both bold and calculated, aiming to restore confidence and stability. His message was clear: Canada would not be bullied. He promised resilience and a steadfast commitment to protecting the nation's interests. Whether Carney's leadership would be enough to weather the storm remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: the trade war had just entered a new, and potentially even more unpredictable chapter. The stakes were higher than ever, and all eyes were on Canada. So, here we are, folks. The year is 2025, the trade war is raging, and the future of US-Canada relations hangs in the balance. On one side you have the US, led by a president who seems to view tariffs as his own personal form of diplomatic confetti, to be thrown around with reckless abandon. On the other side you have Canada, a nation that's tired of being the bigger person, tired of turning the other cheek, and ready to stand up for its economic interests. Leading the charge for Canada is Steve Verhulst, the country's chief trade negotiator, and a man who, by all accounts, is as tough as a $2 steak and twice as sharp. Verhulst's mission is to navigate the treacherous waters of trade negotiations, safeguard the USMCA, and try to prevent this whole thing from spiraling into a full-blown economic meltdown. It's a tall order to be sure, but if anyone can pull it off, it's Verhulst. So what does the future hold for US-Canada trade? Only time will tell. So there you have it, the 2025 US-Canada trade war, a tale of tariffs, tantrums, and enough political drama to make even the most jaded observer reach for the antacids. As we speak, the trade war remains unresolved. Both sides are dug in, unwilling to back down, locked in a stalemate that seems as intractable as a Canadian winter. Economic experts warn that this prolonged trade war could have dire consequences for both economies. The longer it drags on, the greater the risk of job losses, price hikes, and a slowdown in economic growth. Stay tuned for more updates on this evolving situation. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay informed on the latest developments.